Dad said anniversary trip canceled, budget issues. I believed him. But a week later, I saw a Facebook album, Paris with whole family. 49 photos. I stayed silent. Then he texted me asking for help, and I never replied. I, 32M, learned something about myself 6 months ago. I learned that the person you think you know best can become a stranger in the time it takes to scroll through 49 photographs. I learned that betrayal doesn't always announce itself with screaming or confrontation. Sometimes it just sits there in your chest, growing heavier with each breath, until you realize the weight has become part of you. My parents' 30th wedding anniversary was supposed to be special. My wife and I had been planning for months to take them on a trip. Nothing extravagant, just a weekend at a lake house upstate where we could all disconnect and celebrate 3 decades of their marriage. My younger sister and her husband were supposed to come too. We'd split the costs 4 ways, and everyone seemed excited about it. Then Dad called me 3 weeks before the trip. His voice carried that apologetic tone I'd heard 1,000 times before, the one he used when he was about to disappoint someone, but had already made peace with it. He told me they couldn't do the anniversary trip anymore. Budget issues, he said. Mom's car had broken down, and the repairs were going to set them back significantly. He felt terrible about it, he assured me, but they just couldn't swing the expense right now. He asked if we could postpone it to next year, maybe around the holidays when things would be more stable financially. I remember standing in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, feeling that familiar mixture of understanding and frustration. My parents weren't wealthy. Dad worked at a manufacturing plant for 30 years before retiring last spring, and Mom had been a school secretary until her own retirement 2 years ago. They lived modestly, always had. The idea that a car repair could derail their plans wasn't surprising. It was just life. I told him it was fine. I meant it too. My wife and I had been looking forward to it, but we understood. I called my sister to let her know, and she seemed disappointed but accepting. We agreed to revisit the idea in a few months. Life moved on. I went back to work, dealt with my own deadlines and responsibilities, and didn't think much more about it. 7 days after that conversation, I was lying in bed scrolling through social media before going to sleep. It was late, past midnight, and my wife was already asleep beside me. My thumb moved automatically through the feed, that mindless motion that fills the space between wakefulness and rest. Then I saw it. My younger sister had posted a photo album. The preview showed her smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower. The caption read something cheerful about family memories and gratitude. My first thought was confusion. My sister worked as a nurse and her husband was a teacher. They weren't the type to spontaneously fly to Paris. My second thought came when I opened the album. 49 photos. I counted them later, though I'd already memorized the number that first night. My sister and her husband in front of Notre Dame. My parents at a cafe with wine glasses raised. The 4 of them on a river cruise along the Seine. Mom laughing in the Louvre. Dad posing near the Arc de Triomphe. Shots of fancy dinners, cobblestone streets, hotel rooms with views of the city skyline. The timestamps showed they'd been there for 5 days. 5 days while I thought they were home, dealing with car repairs and budget issues. I sat there in the dark, phone screen illuminating my face, scrolling through each photograph with increasing disbelief. The photos were recent, posted that evening. The trip had just ended. They'd probably landed back home that same day. I kept waiting for some explanation to reveal itself in the captions, some detail that would make this make sense. Nothing came. My wife stirred beside me and asked if I was okay. I told her I couldn't sleep. I didn't show her the photos. Not then. I needed to process what I was seeing first, needed to understand it myself before trying to explain it to anyone else. The evidence was undeniable. The Eiffel Tower doesn't exist in upstate New York. There was no mistaking the location. This wasn't some old trip being posted late. The clothes they wore matched the season. My sister's haircut was new, one she'd gotten just 2 weeks ago. Every detail confirmed what my brain was struggling to accept. They'd lied. Not a white lie, not an exaggeration. A deliberate, planned deception. Dad had called me specifically to cancel our anniversary trip, had invented a story about car repairs and budget constraints, and then had turned around and taken a trip to Paris with my sister and her husband. The cost difference between a weekend at a lake house and 5 days in Paris wasn't subtle. We were talking thousands of dollars. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there constructing and deconstructing theories. Maybe they'd won a contest. Maybe my sister had paid for everything as a surprise. Maybe there was some explanation I wasn't seeing. But none of those theories held up under scrutiny. If it had been a surprise or a gift, why lie about the car? Why not just say they couldn't do our trip because something else had come up? Why the elaborate story about budget problems? The only conclusion that made sense was the one I didn't want to face. They'd chosen to exclude me. They'd chosen my sister over me, had wanted to celebrate this milestone with her and not with me, and had lied to my face to cover it up. Morning came and I functioned on autopilot. My wife eventually noticed something was wrong, and I showed her the album. Her reaction mirrored mine. Shock, confusion, then anger on my behalf. She wanted me to call them immediately to demand an explanation. I told her I needed time to think. I went to work and moved through my day like a ghost. Colleagues asked questions, and I answered them. I attended meetings and took notes. But inside, I was replaying every interaction with my parents from the past year, looking for signs I'd missed, trying to understand when I'd become the son they felt comfortable lying to. My phone buzzed that afternoon. Dad was calling. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message asking how I was doing, saying they'd just gotten back from a wonderful trip my sister had surprised them with, and wanting to catch up soon. The lie continued even after the photos were public. He knew I could see the album. My sister and I were friends on social media. He called anyway and fed me the sanitized version where everything was a spontaneous surprise, where there was no premeditation, no choice to exclude me. I deleted the voicemail without responding. My sister called the next day. I didn't answer. She sent a text saying the trip had been amazing and she wished I could have been there. That last part felt like salt in a wound. I wished I could have been there too. The difference was she'd made sure I wasn't. Days passed, and I maintained silence. My wife asked what I planned to do. I told her I honestly didn't know. The hurt was evolving into something colder, something more permanent. It wasn't anger exactly, though anger was part of it. It was a fundamental reassessment of relationships I'd thought were solid. I thought about confronting them. I scripted conversations in my head. Imagined the satisfaction of laying out exactly what they'd done and watching them scramble for excuses. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the certainty that no explanation would actually satisfy me. They'd made a choice. They'd looked at the situation and decided I wasn't worth including, wasn't worth being honest with. What could they possibly say that would undo that? So I did nothing. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't comment on the photos or acknowledge them in any way. When Dad called again, I didn't answer. When Mom sent a text asking if everything was all right, I read it and set my phone down. The silence became its own response. 3 weeks went by. My wife started worrying that I was handling this wrong, that I needed closure, that ghosting my family wasn't healthy. Maybe she was right. I didn't particularly care. Every time I thought about reaching out, I'd remember scrolling through those 49 photos and the feeling would crystallize again. They'd looked so happy, all 4 of them, enjoying this incredible experience together, while I sat at home believing their lie about car repairs. Then Dad's text came through on a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner when my phone lit up with his name. The message was long, longer than usual. He explained that he and Mom were having financial trouble. Real trouble this time, he emphasized. They'd made some poor investment decisions and were facing a significant shortfall. He knew it was a lot to ask, but could I help them out with a loan? They needed $8,000 to cover some urgent expenses. He promised they'd pay me back as soon as they could. He just needed this one favor. I read the message twice. Then I set my phone face down on the counter and went back to chopping vegetables. My wife asked who'd texted. I told her it was Dad asking for money. She picked up my phone, read the message, and her face darkened. She asked what I was going to say. I told her I wasn't going to say anything. She started to argue, then stopped herself. She understood. The irony was too perfect. The same man who'd claimed budget issues to cancel a weekend trip before spending thousands on Paris now needed $8,000 from the son he'd lied to. The same father who'd excluded me from a family celebration now expected me to bail him out of financial trouble. I didn't reply that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Dad sent a follow-up text 4 days later, shorter this time, just asking if I'd gotten his message. I read it and deleted it. Mom called. I didn't answer. My sister sent a long text about how Mom and Dad were really struggling and I needed to step up as the older brother. I almost laughed at that one. Step up. Like I hadn't tried to step up by planning an anniversary celebration for them. Like they hadn't actively prevented me from doing exactly that. The silence stretched into its second month. My wife asked periodically if I was sure about this approach. I told her I was. She accepted it, though I could tell she worried about the long-term implications. What I couldn't explain to her, what I barely understood myself, was that the silence felt like the only honest thing in the entire situation. They'd lied with words. I was responding with absence. It felt proportional. Update 1. It's been 4 months now since I last spoke to any of them. The silence has settled into something resembling normalcy. My wife and I have started planning our own trip, just the two of us, something we've been putting off for years. It feels good to focus on our own lives rather than the drama I walked away from. Dad sent another text last month. Shorter this time, more desperate. They'd had to borrow money from somewhere else at a terrible interest rate. He didn't ask for help directly, just informed me of the situation in what I assume was meant to be a guilt-inducing way. I felt nothing reading it. The man in those texts felt like a stranger. Maybe he always had been, and I'd just been too invested in the idea of family to notice. My sister stopped reaching out after the 3rd week. I saw recently that she'd posted something vague on social media about toxic people and protecting your peace. I wondered if she meant me. The irony of that didn't escape me either. The hardest part hasn't been the silence itself. It's been the realization of what the silence revealed. When I stopped reaching out, nobody fought for me. Nobody showed up at my door demanding to fix things. The relationship had apparently been sustained entirely by my effort, and the moment I withdrew that effort, it simply evaporated. That hurt worse than the original betrayal in some ways. It confirmed that whatever I'd thought we had was largely one-sided. My wife asked me last week if I thought I'd ever reconcile with them. I told her honestly that I didn't know. Part of me wants to believe that someday they'll acknowledge what they did, will offer a real apology, will show that they understand the weight of their choices. But I'm not holding my breath. People who can lie that easily and then ask for money without addressing the lie aren't people prone to self-reflection. I've started seeing a therapist, not because I think I'm handling this wrong, but because I needed someone outside the situation to help me process it. She asked me in our 2nd session what I ultimately wanted from all this. I didn't have a good answer. Revenge felt too small a word for what I was feeling. Justice felt too grand. What I wanted, I eventually told her, was for them to feel the absence of me the way I'd felt the absence of their honesty. I wanted them to understand what they'd thrown away. She asked if I thought they did understand that. I said I doubted it. They probably saw me as stubborn or petty, as overreacting to a simple lie. They probably told themselves that I was being dramatic, that I should just get over it. That realization didn't make me want to reach out. It made me more certain that silence was the right choice. Update 2. 6 months have passed since I saw those photographs. 6 months of silence, and honestly, I've never felt clearer about a decision in my life. Something happened last week that confirmed I'd made the right choice. I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store. She'd known my parents for years, had attended countless family gatherings and holidays. She spotted me in the produce section and immediately came over with that sympathetic expression people get when they think they know your business. She told me she'd heard about the falling out. She said Mom had been calling mutual friends, telling them how hurt she was that I'd cut them off over nothing, how she didn't understand why I was being so cold. According to this friend, Mom's version of events was that they'd taken a trip my sister had planned, completely spontaneous, and I'd gotten jealous and stopped speaking to them. No mention of the canceled anniversary trip. No mention of the lie about car repairs. Just a son who couldn't be happy for his parents enjoying a vacation. I stood there holding a bag of apples and listening to this woman tell me my own story wrong. She was clearly trying to mediate, suggesting that maybe I should be the bigger person and reach out. Families fight, she said. It's not worth losing your parents over a misunderstanding. I thanked her for her concern and walked away. But that conversation crystallized something for me. They weren't just content to let the silence stand. They were actively rewriting history, casting themselves as victims of my unreasonable behavior. They'd learned nothing, felt nothing. The only thing that bothered them was that their lie had consequences. My wife was furious when I told her. She wanted me to set the record straight with everyone, to make sure people knew the truth. I told her it didn't matter. The people who needed to know the truth already did. The 3 of them knew exactly what they'd done. My wife knew. That was enough. Dad sent another text 2 weeks ago. They were facing possible foreclosure, he said. Could I please help? He added that he was sorry for whatever he'd done to upset me, though he still didn't understand what it was. That last part was what got me. 6 months, and he was still pretending confusion, still acting like the problem was unclear. I blocked his number after that. Then Mom's. Then my sister's. I realized I'd been leaving them unblocked because some part of me wanted to see if they'd ever acknowledge the truth. But they weren't going to. They'd chosen their narrative and were sticking to it. Continuing to receive their messages wasn't giving them opportunities to apologize. It was just giving them chances to hurt me again. My therapist asked how I felt about the blocking. I told her it felt like closing a door that should have been closed months ago. She asked if I felt guilty. I said no. Guilty would imply I'd done something wrong. I'd planned a celebration for my parents. They'd lied to me and excluded me. I'd chosen not to continue participating in that relationship. There was no guilt in protecting myself. Update 3. 8 months now. The holidays came and went without a word from them. I'd wondered if Christmas might prompt some attempt at reconciliation, but my phone stayed silent. My wife and I spent the time with her family, and it was peaceful in a way holidays hadn't been in years. No obligation. No performance. Just genuine enjoyment of time with people who valued my presence. Something unexpected happened last month. I got a call from my sister's husband. I almost didn't answer since I'd blocked my immediate family, but his number came through. He asked if we could meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We sat in a coffee shop downtown, and he got straight to it. He told me he was leaving my sister. Said he couldn't stay in a family that operated the way hers did. He'd been uncomfortable with the Paris trip from the start. He explained. My sister had convinced my parents to lie to me because she'd wanted it to be just the 4 of them. She'd told them I'd understand eventually, that it wasn't a big deal. He'd objected but had been overruled. Watching me cut everyone off had made him realize something. He said. It had made him see that the problem wasn't just the lie about Paris. It was a pattern of behavior where my feelings and presence were treated as negotiable. He'd witnessed years of small exclusions, dismissals, moments where they'd chosen not to include me or consider my perspective. Paris was just the most obvious example. He apologized for not standing up for me. Said he should have refused to go on the trip unless I was included or at least told the truth. He'd been a coward, he admitted. Now he was trying to do better, starting with getting out of a marriage with someone who could treat her brother that way and feel no remorse. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated hearing that someone else had seen what I'd seen, that I wasn't crazy or oversensitive. Part of me felt sad that his marriage was ending partially because of my family's dysfunction. Mostly I just felt tired. I asked him if my sister had ever expressed regret about what happened. He shook his head. She thought I was being ridiculous, he said. She genuinely believed I should just get over it, and that my silence was emotionally manipulative. Even now, facing the end of her marriage partially because of this, she saw herself as blameless. We finished our coffee, and he left. I haven't heard from him since. I hope he finds happiness away from that toxicity. He deserved better than being pulled into their dysfunction. My wife asked if knowing the full truth changed anything for me. I thought about it and realized it didn't. I'd already known, on some level, that the exclusion had been deliberate. Hearing it confirmed didn't make it worse. If anything, it validated my decision to walk away. The financial situation with my parents apparently deteriorated further. I heard through another mutual friend that they'd had to sell their house and move into a smaller apartment. Part of me wondered if the $8,000 I'd refused to lend would have prevented that. Then I remembered the thousands they'd spent on Paris, and the wondering stopped. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. Sometimes people ask me if I miss them. It's a complicated question. I miss the idea of having parents I could trust. I miss the version of them I thought existed before I saw those 49 photographs. But I don't miss the real them, the people who could look me in the eye and lie, who could exclude me without guilt, who could rewrite history to avoid accountability. Those people I don't miss at all. My therapist said something in our last session that stuck with me. She said that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is acknowledge when a relationship costs more than it gives. She said silence isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about protection, about refusing to keep breaking yourself against people who won't change. I think about those 49 photos sometimes. Not as often as I used to, but occasionally they still surface in my memory. Each one a moment of joy I wasn't invited to share. Each one a choice they made to exclude me. Each one a lie they decided was acceptable. The difference now is that when I think about them, I don't feel the sharp pain I felt that first night. I feel something closer to acceptance. They showed me who they were. I believed them, and I responded accordingly. There's a strange peace in that clarity, in knowing exactly where you stand, even when where you stand is alone. My wife and I booked that trip we've been planning. We're leaving next month for 2 weeks in Japan. Just us. No family drama. No lies. No performing for people who don't value the performance. Just two people who chose each other, building a life that doesn't require anyone's validation but our own. Dad's last text before I blocked him asked when I was going to stop being childish and come back to the family. I remember reading that and actually laughing. The family I'd thought I had never existed. What he wanted me to come back to was my old role as the reliable one. The one who could be lied to and counted on anyway. The one whose feelings were inconvenient but ultimately dismissible. I'm not going back to that. Not now. Probably not ever. And I'm finally okay with that choice. Better than okay. I'm at peace. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real-life-based stories. Thanks in advance.